Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know as we're talking college football on this channel year round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Big Ten championship game. They are facing Penn State. Ohio State's lost to Michigan, allowed Penn State to get in. Very interesting point spread here. Oregon opened as a 4.5-point favorite. It has been bet down to 3.5. The over-under set at 49.5. First of all, let me say this. Sometimes it's not, when we talk betting, it's not just, matchups and this and that, but it's kind of the context behind it. I'm just kind of curious to see what kind of energy and environment Indianapolis has this weekend. There's been a big conversation about the role of conference championship games in this era of college football, and I think this is a good example. The SEC is going to have a great crowd because Texas's first trip to Atlanta, and of course, Georgia fans, it's a drive. You don't have to travel for 3 days. You don't have to get on a plane, whatever. The Oregon-Penn State game is a different deal, though. Oregon, yes, it's their first Big Ten championship, but they got to get on a flight and fly cross country. Penn State, they know they're in the playoff. They might host a playoff game a week from now. They might have to go on the road. And so if you actually look into it, they're actually having some trouble selling tickets to this conference championship game. I think the get-in price was like $12-13 the other day when I was looking. So I don't know what the vibe is. I do think Penn State will probably have a little bit of a home field advantage. Let's go ahead and talk about these two teams. Oregon, I'll just say, is it possible Oregon is just clearly the best team in college football and nobody's talking? Like I feel like we're in this conversation of where's Ohio State? Where's Texas? What about Georgia? Could Bama make a run if they get in? And it's are we positive that Oregon just hasn't been the best team all year, and because for whatever reason we're just not giving them enough credit? Because think about what they've done. They're the only undefeated team in college football. It's worth noting they took 4 cross-country trips in Big Ten play. The only 2 games that were, they had 3 games that were close. One was against Ohio State. Okay, Ohio State's good. Everybody agrees, even if they lost to Michigan, that they're a very good team. But Ohio State won. Boise in week 2, and then Wisconsin a few weeks ago in a game where it was Oregon's 8th straight game, 3rd trip to the East Coast or the Midwest. And they were they had the longest stretch of consecutive games all in league play as anybody in college football. So they were worn out, they were ground down, and then they come out of the bye last week and absolutely destroy a pretty good Washington team. So I'm not sold that Oregon, they might just be the best team in college football. And what's interesting is you kind of have the stats to back it up. I mean, let me ask you a question. What does Oregon not do well? Top 15 pass offense in college football. Top 35 run offense. They're not great, but good enough. Top 25 rush defense, top 10 pass defense. And just think about the individual players. Dylan Gabriel's completing 74% of his passes, one of the winningest quarterbacks in college football history. You have a 1,000-yard receiver in Jordan James. You have 3 elite receivers in Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden. You have 2 offensive tackles that will play in the NFL probably next year. The defense is loaded with all sorts of future NFL players. And here's the crazy part about Oregon. I don't think it's not a part that will make it part of the conversation that they're one of the best teams in the country, but or the best team in the country. But what I do think is interesting is this. They should be relatively refreshed because they just had a bye week 2 weeks ago. So that long stretch where they didn't get a bye could end up paying dividends because they should be the fresher, more kind of recharged team coming into this game. Outside of Oregon, let's talk about Penn State. Penn State's fascinating. Again, the money appears to be coming on Penn State. And listen, to their credit, they did everything that we asked of them, right? You did lose to Ohio State, but Ohio State, again, is a good football team. Ohio State, listen, we know what happened last week against Michigan. That's another conversation for another day. But Ohio State did go to Oregon and if Will Howard knew how to slide a second earlier, could have potentially won that game. And so I only bring it up because Penn State's only loss was to Ohio State. They had the ball on the goal line with a chance to take the lead. They didn't, but they took care of everybody else. Went 11-1 with the schedule that they had, beat everybody that they were supposed to. I'm never going to discredit a team for doing that. Now, in terms of what Penn State does well, listen, they're kind of the same Penn State that they've always been, right? Top 10 in rush defense, top 10 in pass defense. They got guys who can get after the quarterback. And then on top of it, the offense is improved. I don't think it's like anywhere close to elite, but it is improved to Penn State's credit. As coming into this game, they obviously have the two running backs who are really, really, really good. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are both about 750 to 800 yard guys. Neither of them is worn down at this point of year. And Drew Aller has been better this season as he's thrown for 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's completing way more passes down the field, 71% completion percentage. I actually think it's a positive that he's thrown more interceptions. I think last year they were super conservative with him. And I think this year he's kind of letting it rip and letting it loose. So that's a good sign. I think you got to feel good if you're a Penn State fan on the improvement of this team. But let's go ahead and get to the pick. And maybe I'm missing something really big here, but my official pick is Oregon minus the 3.5. Listen, like I said, the Vegas people love Penn State in this spot. I just can't get behind it. And part of it is, listen, I'm not the person that because someone hasn't done something that means that it's incapable of ever happening. Like just because Penn State hasn't won these type of games doesn't mean that they're incapable of it. But I do think there's something to be said of like, one, they only played one team the equivalent of Oregon all year long. And in that game, it was not that competitive. Listen, they did not win the game. So you lose to Ohio State in your biggest game of the season. That's part of it. But then beyond that, let's also say this. Like, it'd be one thing if you lost to Ohio State and you blew everybody else out, right? Like blame Indiana for whatever you want. Say Indiana this, that. Indiana lost to Ohio State. Close win against Michigan, which now doesn't look so bad. They destroyed everybody else. Penn State didn't destroy everybody else. It was 2 weeks ago that they easily could have lost to Minnesota. And so I just bring it up because as I break down this game, what stands out to me, why is the money coming in on Penn State? You can't say that they've been great in these moments. And here's the counterpoint. You can't say that Oregon has been bad against the best competition they've played. Listen, if the argument is Penn State's defense is elite, okay, cool. Oregon's played 2 elite defenses already, Michigan and Ohio State. They put up 30-plus points on both of them. And don't tell me, well, Ohio State was at home. Well, okay, you went to Michigan and put up 38 and kind of took your foot off the gas in the second half. Put up over close to 1,000 yards between those two games. I think it was over 500 against Ohio State. So they've done this against elite competition throughout the season. I think Oregon wins. I think Oregon covers. I think I said 28-21 for Georgia. I'll say 28-17 in this game. Oregon wins. They get the Big Ten championship. They obviously will have the first number 1 overall seed in the college football playoff. I believe Oregon wins this game.